All right, my friends, we got a good one here today. I interviewed Fernando Aguirre from the modernsurvivalist.com website, the YouTube channel, The Modern Survivalist, as well as three books on Amazon about survival skills. Fernando survived the economic collapse of Argentina from 2001, and he shares a story of just it's nuts. Really, no other way around that. How the government stole your money, the crime that was running rampant, and just anyway, he was able to escape, thankfully. And I hate to say escape, was like it was, it's not like the zombies were attacking, but he talks about it. It's interesting. So he lives in Spain now. And he just just a great guy. He's got 3 kids, a wife. He's happily married. But he says, look, at the end of the day, people are all prepared for like living out in the woods. He goes, but that's not really true. Most of us are going to be in urban, suburban areas. And we got to learn how to survive in urban, suburban areas. And so he wrote a book on street survival skills. Another one on bugging out. His biggest book is the Surviving Economic Collapse, personal, I've got it right here, the Modern Survival Manual, Surviving the Economic Collapse of the 2001 Argentina Economy. And it's incredibly interesting. And then Fernando's got a friend, a Spanish language guy he knows, because Fernando also has a Spanish language YouTube channel, and his books are all in Spanish as English as well. But from Venezuela, and he just shares with us the stories of the Venezuela economic crash that was deliberate, just like Argentina, just like what's going on right now. And it's incredible. And I stay to the end, because I'm telling you, man, there's a couple tidbits in here that you will learn. You're like, oh, I never thought about that. Because look, I've been active in the prepping community for essentially my whole life. Being from Maine, on an island, you have to be prepared. And so I've always been a prepper by without knowing what it was. But man, I never thought about this one. I'm not going to share with you now. You got to stay till the end, because it helps with the algorithm. I'm just joking, but you got to watch it. I thought that was incredibly insightful. Just good guy all around. So subscribe to his YouTube channel. Links are in the show notes. Subscribe to his website. Buy his books. I'll put all links in there. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. So all right, put the comments in the show notes. We'll see you. Fernando, we're live on. We're not on a live stream, but I'm recording right now. And literally, this is nothing. Nothing fancy, nothing formal, but man, I'll do a more formal introduction, but I appreciate you being here. So now you're in Spain. Do you mind sharing what part of Spain, if not the town specifically?
Yeah, the southern part of Spain, close to like Malaga, from Marbella, all the southern part of Spain. It's pretty nice. And that's where I am. It's beautiful weather, nice food as well. People are very relaxed, maybe a little bit too relaxed, which kind of gets on my nerves at times, but man, it's nice. It's nice living.
Now, where are you from? Where were you born?
In Argentina, in South America.
Okay. And you lived in Boston. You just said you lived in Boston for some time.
Yes. Lived in Boston for 3 years. Moved back to Argentina. Then moved in Argentina to I lived in Buenos Aires, the capital, and yeah. I moved to one of the provinces, like the inner provinces. Lived there for a couple of years. Then just got married, went on with my life, and after in 2001 happened in Argentina, which was like the big economic crisis over there. And a few years later, I moved to Northern Ireland. So I lived in Northern Ireland as well, another island.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I lived there for 4 years, and now living in Spain.
And you got wife and kids?
Yeah, wife and 3 kids, yes.
Okay, gotcha.
One that's already going to college, so yeah.
Well, I got 4 kids, man. I got 1 in college too, and 3 coming up behind them. And it's man, and they it's actually funny, because you ever heard of Mallorca? You ever been to Mallorca?
Haven't been, but I heard of it. Yes.
It's like everyone's like, Dad, I know you love islands, and Mom, that's my wife, she loves the warm weather. We should move to Mallorca. And I said, hey, I'm open for anything. I just at the end of the day, though, America is still for me, it's the best place to be, because sure. I do like to own firearms and whatnot and everything. But so now you've relocated from Argentina to, so now you're living in Spain, from Northern Ireland, Northern Ireland, all that. How did you get 3 books, man? 3 books. How did you get this whole survivalist prepping thing. I got so many questions to ask, but how did you get involved in that? It's interesting as all can be.
Well, I was always interested in wilderness survival kind of thing, the outdoors sort of stuff from a very early age. I got my first survival knife when I was 10 years old. I asked my dad, I want this, and he got me one of these cheap knockoff Rambo type knives. So that was my first introduction. But later on, I also was very much interested in firearms as well. And I was fortunate enough that at a very early age, I got some quality firearms training from a couple military guys that had opened a range, and I was their only student. So I had two instructors, myself, for 3 months, and I learned a good bit about firearms and defensive shooting when I was 15 years old, which is not very common. Yeah, that was a very.
That's when you were living in Argentina back then.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Like what year? Like what time? Like what in the late '90s, early '90s?
Yes.
Okay.
Like early mid '90s, maybe, give or take. Yes, that would be. That would be about the mid '90s would be when I took that first serious defensive shooting course, and that stuck with me over the years. I was always interested in survival, but that brought like another light of another aspect to preparedness. And then when 2001 happened, the first thing we all realized was that the big problem was not wilderness survival, but the security aspect, the risk of getting hurt. That was like the big thing, the big concern. And of course, all the financial stuff that you're familiar with.
Well, what happened exactly? So was that Kirchner? Was that who it was? Who was like what happened in 2001 in Argentina? Fill us in, please.
Yeah, well, what happened was the following. Argentina had been with an economy that was not very realistic. We had a 1-to-1 exchange rate with the U.S. dollar with our Argentine peso. So, one of the conversations that we had, and I remember in my family as a kid, was, man, we had lived in the United States. We liked living in the United States, but you made more. My father made more money as a manager, like an executive. He would be making more money in dollars in Argentina than in the United States. So we would travel to the United States very often because we liked it. But the economy was in such a way that you made more money in Argentina, you made more U.S. dollars than living in the United States. So ironically enough, you would have to take like a big pay cut in those days to move to the United States.
Yeah, right.
And that's kind of ironic right now and doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. But back in the day, now you can imagine that economy was not very realistic. It was purely based on national debt, on an exchange rate that was unsustainable. And eventually the country went down. Because of this exchange rate, everything was cheaper being brought from abroad, so national industry was destroyed. Unemployment had been going up steadily, and soon enough we defaulted on the national debt. It was the largest default of its time, 132 billion, that just couldn't keep up with the payments. And that's when the banks closed, when everyone started freaking out, and everything went to hell from there.
If you want, my dog comes in on occasion. So if you wonder why I keep doing that, every now and again he comes in to let me know he's still here. And so basically they're living on borrowed time. Essentially, it sounds like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Well, one of the things that many folks in America look at and kind of have a little light bulb, and they're living on debt. Constantly. The country, not people. And in the case of Argentina, it wasn't people living on credit card, because you wouldn't get that. In Argentina, you just couldn't get into deep financial debt because banks never allowed you that. But the country was the one that was borrowing for you and allowing an exchange rate that was unrealistic. And again, this idea of buying everything from China, having nothing made locally, and an economy that's just based, well, the thing is, like, all fiat currencies are based on the same principle. So that's what a lot of people feel is a little bit of a similarity.
It sounds almost like Greece, man. I mean, Greece was with the euro. It's the same exact thing. At some point,
it
can't keep going on like that, right?
At some point, Yeah, at some point an adjustment is necessary, and if that adjustment isn't made in a reasonable or escalated manner, it just crumbles and goes down on its own. Yes, keeping up realistic economies just because of political reasons or corruption, often the case, it just doesn't end up well ever.
Didn't they take like some of your savings accounts or something like that? Or what did they do in
Right.
Argentina? Or did they said, we're going to take 20 cents on the dollar or something? What happened?
Right. Well, you had your first of all, banks closed their doors. I mean, there were people that had maybe their entire life savings in the bank,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't take it out, and they said, no, we're not giving people back their money. That's, an emergency law was passed or whatnot, but they just made it legal, and it just national emergency declare or whatever, and they just took people's money. And the thing is, you could have your account in US dollars, or you could have your account in pesos. A lot of people had their accounts in US dollars because,
Right.
again, you could have either 1 peso was $1. So you had $10,000, 10,000. And imagine living like that for 10 years. People thought of, yes, it's kind of the same thing, right?
Right.
No,
Right,
it's
right.
not. But you had your life savings in US dollars, and all of a sudden they told you, no, you cannot get it out. And they devaluated the currency, and they converted your account in dollars, they converted it to pesos, which was now worth 3 times less. So basically you lost 75% of your savings. With a new exchange rate, you lost 75% of your savings in just a matter of days.
But I mean, did not that many people in Argentina have savings? How is not like a revolution or something like that?
Well, that's what happened. Everything, the country burned for like a few weeks, and even months later, it was still, there was looting, there were shops being destroyed, and there was constant protesting on the streets, on banks fortified, like banks would put like sheet metal and barricades because people were obviously upset and they wanted to break into the bank and just destroy the place. There's very sad stories. Some people that just died. Some people maybe had money for a life-saving surgery, and just before they could travel abroad for it, they just took the money. Or someone that needed a heart transplant, or all sorts of stories like that. So yes, it was a very complicated time. The president at the time resigned, famously left in a chopper, escaped the presidential palace, and the following president only lasted for a day or two. He resigned as well. Then the next guy, you start going through the chain of command, and everyone kept on resigning. We basically ran out of people. It was famously, no, I'm not even kidding. It was famously 5 presidents in 1 week. Because each guy would look at the mess. I mean, some of them never thought in their entire lives that they would be president of the country. All of a sudden, it's, dude, you're next. You're next on the list. You're president right now. And they would sit down, take a look at, and I'm not up for it. They would, I resign. Can I resign? Yes, you can. Okay, I resign right now. I'm no longer president. 5 presidents in just 1 week. Until,
what happened? So the economy's on fire. The banks are fortified with sheet metal. There's 5 presidents in a week. I mean, I can't imagine there's any trade or commerce or anything. Right? I mean, people are like, what? I mean, what? And you were there. You were living there, right?
Yeah, sure. That's I mean, I lived for years after that in Buenos Aires. It was very chaotic, and well, that's when. Going back to your original question, that's when I first started realizing, okay, a lot of the things I like about survival and preparedness don't really apply to what's happening right now. Right now, we're looking at a destroyed economy, crime going through the roof, social unrest, protests on the street constantly. The kind of thing that you're seeing right now would be more like urban survival. What I eventually defined or I think of as modern survivalism in terms of all these things combined, but it was not the sticks and the fire starting in the middle of the woods, it was something else.
Yeah, it's not the zombie. That's the thing, is everyone thinks, oh, you're preparing for zombies. It's like, no.
It was worse. It was zombies don't take your money from your bank account.
Illegally theft. So, I mean, where it was like electricity still going and stuff, or was it even just
Right.
like everything was just? I mean, I want to ask you about Venezuela here a little bit, but was it just, for
Well,
like a year, nothing's happening, or what's going on? You know what I mean?
the that's the thing. It's different stages. It can be quite complex to explain. But imagine that if it happened in the United States,
Right.
or imagine what's happening right now with the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's not happening. Many things are not happening overnight. I mean, a month later, you still have electricity. But imagine a country where there's 25% unemployment, where the currency just lost 75% of its
Yeah.
value. Companies, including the electric company, is already struggling. They would
Right.
have to charge 4 times as much. No, you cannot do that because people cannot afford it.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
but we cannot have a company based on thin air. Okay, just do your best, and eventually you start seeing more blackouts, more rolling blackouts because the economy just doesn't keep up with it. That would be how it ended up happening. A few months later, and definitely a couple of years later, the entire grid not being updated. It had already been, not being properly kept for a while already before all of this went down. But this just intensified everything. So you would have constant blackouts, and power would go out like a couple of hours a day, sometimes more. If you live like very far out away from the city, you could go maybe for a week without power. And this is something similar to what happens in Venezuela, where people maybe have water a couple days a month. I talked with a guy from Venezuela. 2 days a month they get water, and power goes out every single day. And phones barely work, and internet sucks, and everything is like that.
So when did you get out? Like, did you have kids back then?
I was by 2001. I was getting married, and yes, soon enough I had my first kid, and it was. It's. I mean, think about it. Every other country in the world where people just get by. They just get by any way they can. If you look at Africa, how does Africa survive? And it's millions of people that just get by day by day. You don't have power, okay. You don't have any electricity. You just do what you can.
Now, did you say ultimately, if I'm going to raise a family, I got to get out of here? That's when you moved to Northern Ireland. How did you end up vacating Argentina? I mean, that's your native land. What would you say?
Yeah.
I got to move to protect my family, or I get a job offer, or what happened?
Yeah. That was maybe it. The thing is, when this happens, your life is kind of like on hold, like it's happening right now. Everyone is like waiting. Your life is on hold. Now, in this case, it's a virus. In my case, it was stupid, out of control crime all over the country, and some people are okay with that. Some people live their life, and if they get mugged, okay, they get mugged. If someone gets shot, they get shot. I had family. I had people within my family that got shot the day before Christmas Eve. Shot full of holes after going to the ATM. So there's this thing you have of always living, watching over your back 24/7. I'm a guy that likes firearms. I've liked firearms since I was 10 years old. Been shooting. But no matter how strong of a Second Amendment guy you are, you cannot live like that all day long. It just drives you nuts. And eventually I said, we're not living. This isn't life. Let's move somewhere else where we are safe. We can keep, going on with our lives like normal people.
Yeah.
Some people give up on that and they just go, okay, whatever. I'm going to be going out for dinner. I mean, nightlife in Buenos Aires is, people stay up until 6 a.m. That's basically on me. That's something that I admitted I couldn't go on with. But there's people that just, don't care and just go on with their lives.
That's crazy. And one of your videos you did, which I thought was, I was like, man, that's crazy. Because I just came across you about a week ago. I saw, 20 lessons from Venezuela about prepping, and I was like, whoa, that's pretty interesting. And I started watching through your binge watching, and you had said something, Fernando, from 6 years ago about toilet paper. I said, of all the stuff, I've been following preps. I've been doing prep, basic prep, you know what I'm saying? But I said, I had never would have thought in 100 years, toilet paper. But you had said that 6 years ago in one of your videos. I was
Yeah.
stunned.
Well, there's people that go very deep into the toilet paper thing. They have like years worth of supplies of toilet paper. My take is have a reasonable amount in case it's not available anymore. Have a reasonable supply of basically everything in your household, because look at what's happening right now.
That's what I'm saying.
There's things that just are not available. And if it wasn't this, it could have been something else. If it was civil unrest and you just have to, an order comes out, everyone stays put, everyone shelters in place, no one is going out, stores are closed. You're just stuck in the same situation. So it's part of what I consider doing methodical, reasonable preparation,
100% right. And that's where I thought, I haven't read your books yet, but you got those 3 books. And I'm looking at them right. I had them right here. The modern survival. Street survival skills. Which one? Yeah. So you got looks like street survival skills. The surviving the economic collapse. That's the big one right there. And
that's the first one. Yes.
And that's a big one there. And I find that interesting. And then bugging out and relocating. So you got 3, and I haven't read.
Yeah. The thing with the books is the first one I wrote with this sort of awakening that I had of, prepping and survival is not really what I thought it would be, because this is so different. I'm stuck home playing video games all day long because I cannot go outside because I get shot. Right. And when I go shooting, I practice in case I get shot as well. And I have my guns and they have come in handy and they save my butt more than once. And I appreciate that. But at the same time, I don't want to live like this the rest of my life.
Right.
So all of this combined was, I would go online because, just like now, you would go online and look for information. Right. Maybe the prepper movement was not as big, but it already existed. Now, most of the stuff you found was not something relatable for me. I just couldn't make much use of that. For me, it was crappy economy, crime, crappy economy, stress, in the family, unemployment, finding ways of earning a living in a terrible economy. All of that is what I was needing. And that was not what was really addressed in the survival community. So that's why I wrote the modern surviving the economic collapse. Then when I moved out of Argentina, I did a lot of research as of what is it that I'm looking for? Where should I go? Which countries offer different things? What is it that defines quality of life for me or for someone else that's looking for something different? And that's where I did a lot of research as of which countries were the more interesting options. And that's why I wrote Bugging Out and Relocating.
Yeah.
And street survival skills is basically a recollection of just that. Survival skills explained with graphics, with drawings, how you fight with a gun, how you fight with a chair, how you drive. That's another big one. Driving in Argentina, where no one respects a traffic light. You just have to wing it,
Right.
Especially after 8 p.m. I mean, if you stop, you get mugged. So you just keep on driving. So lots of different skills in terms of avoiding scams, and of course some of the basics in terms of food storage, water purification, those things that you definitely still need. But that's what street survival skill is. I think it's a more interesting. I mean, in street survival skills, I explain how to make your own hand sanitizer, because it's something I already knew that if something like this happened, you would be running out of it. Having your N95, how to wear that. So all of those things are basically practical skills for modern survival.
Well, it's crazy too, because, in the prepping, it's kind of like we're going to be out in the woods and how to do a fire, but that's not true, man. I mean, it could be true for some people, but the vast majority of us live in urban or suburban areas, and you're not having to go out and build a fire with no matches. You gotta, just like you said, you gotta hunker down, prepare for the crime that could come, obviously. But you don't want to sit there with a compound with, freaking 50 cows. We don't want to do that. We just want to live normal lives, but you still have to have basic stuff. And it's just interesting. This pandemic has shown, I think, a lot of people, not only myself included, we're not prepared for, like, the electricity's still on. You see what I'm saying? We're still talking. Sure. The internet, and we always think and then the prepping world, you got to have solar, photovoltaic and all, and that's all good. I'm not saying don't, but
absolutely.
That is not the essential.
Peak oil. We were told that there would be peak oil, that a gallon of gasoline would be worth $1 million, and now it's worth less than zero. It's crazy.
Exactly. That actually brings the question, like in Argentina, when they got rid of the currency, or they devalued the currency, they stole people's money. Did people have gold? Could you trade gold, or was it illegal? Or how did that work with gold or silver or precious metals?
There's not a very strong culture in terms of precious metals in Argentina, but there is this idea of, yes, you should. I guess it goes back to the immigrants. Argentina is a country of immigrants. Like, my entire family was all from Spain. My wife's side is from Italy, and you would have this culture of always have a little bit of gold, or for first communion you would get something of gold, or a gold chain or something. And a lot of people, they ended up selling their wedding bands or whatever gold they had, because that was worth a lot of money. Same thing in Venezuela. I was talking with this guy, Daniel from Venezuela, who said, Fernando, people here already sold everything they had. People here already sold every single bit of gold they had, because it's so much more valuable than the local currency. And even he explained to me that if you went to Venezuela and sold your gold ring, your wedding band, you would be getting maybe like 50% of the spot price. You will be getting hit very hard. But even that is a pile of money for anyone in Venezuela. So it's super valuable. So that is definitely true. The idea that precious metals do come in handy when the economy crashes, for sure.
Now, you also in the video about Venezuela, you did a follow-up on that. And this was incredibly interesting to me. Buying a pound of chicken with 5 pounds of cash. I mean, go into that story about Venezuela, Fernando, because I was.
This is one of the things Daniel told me. That Daniel is a very interesting guy. He's a prepper in Venezuela. Unfortunately, he doesn't speak English, so I always have to do this thing of distilling the information I get from him. But he told me that for a pound of chicken, you need 5 pounds of paper money, because it's worth nothing. He also told me something very interesting, that they're trying to get rid of cash. They want to have everything digital.
Yes.
Because that's a way of people not understanding how money is losing its value. And so as to avoid these images of Weimar Republic, of piles of cash that mean nothing anymore. So they give you, he told me that they just give you enough cash per day for a coffee. That's as much cash you can take, because otherwise, the paper is a lot more expensive than the actual money it's printed on. It's incredible, but that's the situation they've ended.
And that's what's scary, though. Everyone's trying to go to a cashless society, and we know. I'm just sitting there thinking, that's not good, man. We know what's happening when they're trying to go to this cashless society. And
they take away what little freedom we have. They take it away, because you no longer, you don't even have that little bit of freedom that means cash. At least I have a few bucks. You're not controlling me. I go and spending, and you have no idea what I did with it. No, now they know exactly what you have. You never have control of it. It's just passing from the bank accounts, and you have zero control over any of it. You're even more of a slave than you already are.
I don't know why anyone, and I know what they do. They always couch it, Fernando, like, we got to stop drug wars. And I'm like, it's not. If you're stopping drug wars, $1,000 in cash isn't going to have you stopping drug wars, man. The whole thing is a scam. I actually, that is one of my pet peeves, is these guys are like just sheep. They're like, oh yeah, no, we should just all go to debit cards. I'm like, man, do you not see what's happening here? Jeez. Have you, something else you said about the Venezuela guy too, is that, initially he was like, all right, well, this will blow over, like kind of in Argentina. Argentina's back, right? Argentina's back to be somewhat prosperous, or no? Is it still chaotic?
It's since it went down in 2001, it's amazing that it's not that amazing. It's the same thing as in Venezuela. Daniel, he was counting on it eventually, things getting better. Like we have it ingrained in our psyche that things eventually get better, because if not, you go nuts, you go crazy. If I told you right now, yes, you're going to be living like this in a lockdown for the rest of your life, with that deadly virus and it's maybe going to be getting even worse, and a lot of more people are going to be dying, you would go nuts. A lot of people would just off themselves, which a lot of people did in Argentina. The suicide rate went up 500%.
Whoa.
That's very typical. When there's a very big economic crisis, suicide rates just because it's a number of things. It's of course the economy. The economy means your family disputes, more divorces, more stress, and just people just cannot take that. But in the case of Venezuela, yes, Daniel, he had enough food for a year and a half, I believe, and eventually he just ran out of food. And his friends who could leave, they left. Some of his friends got killed in protests and and things like that. And he told me, I'm alone. I have no one, which is kind of sad. I mean, he has his wife and his kids, but he has no more friends. His friends either left or got killed. I didn't want to end up like that. I still have.
Can he leave, or they clamp down? You can't leave. Kind of like Cuba. Are they? Can you leave if you want, or no?
It is very difficult because this is one of the things I didn't understand, just like you don't understand. Why would you live like that? But think of it this way. Imagine you're living in Venezuela right now. You're making about $5 a month. That's how much money you're working. You're earning. You're making $5 a month, and you need to pay for a plane ticket that's going to be $1,000 or $800. And beyond that, you need to buy the most expensive passport in the planet is a Venezuelan passport. It costs $200 to buy a Venezuelan passport. Maybe more now. I'm not keeping up with it. But they make it almost impossible for you to leave. Basically, if you want to leave Venezuela, you have to start walking across the border with nothing and go with that. And a lot of people will not go with that. A lot of people just.
I never thought about it like that. That's so yes, you can leave, but you literally can't because you don't have the money or resources to do it. You can't.
I talked about this with Daniel to quite a bit of detail. I mean, I asked him, why didn't you leave? Because he would be like back in the day, he was like a upper middle class guy. He had a security business. He did security for banking, for banks and that sort of thing, installing alarms. And so he was okay. He was good. He had his home paid for. And one of the things he saw was that people that left, the government took their home. You couldn't sell your house when you left. You left with nothing because banks were not going to be giving you any money. And your house that you worked your entire life to buy, you wouldn't be able to sell it. They would just take it away from you and give it to one of someone loyal to the party or whatever, right? So he saw that his friends lost their homes. And he said, I just cannot lose my home. If I leave, I cannot even sell it. I leave with nothing.
Right.
And that fear, that fear of leaving with nothing is why he didn't leave. And
that's how they get.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, he kind of regrets it, I believe.
Now
it's too late.
You can't blame him though. He's like, if I were to leave, the government's going to steal my property. I'm not going to get the money that I had out of that, and then you're also hoping, you're optimistic that this will blow over. That when Chavez goes, it won't be Maduro. You see, I mean, you can't. It's not kind of like Cuba. I mean, hell, it's been going on for 70 years down there.
Yeah, it's not going to be changing. Now, imagine that. I'd like people to think for a second. Whatever happens, you can leave. You can walk right now. You can buy a plane ticket, but you're leaving with nothing.
Exactly.
You don't have any money. You're not going to be. You're thinking, I'll sell my house and buy it in Costa Rica. No. You're not. You don't have anything. You lose everything you worked your entire life. How many people would do that? There's very few people that have that in them to just do something so daring and jump into the unknown like that. It's not easy. It's super
And then
hard.
you got no place to go to. Where are you going to go, Fernando? I mean, it's not, you can't just pick up and go to, I don't know, freaking France. I'm just thinking I can't just say I'm going to France. I don't know.
That's some of the things that I try to go through in my second book and bugging out. The way I at least see it is you always need that plan B of, if everything goes to hell, what is it? And that's where precious metals. If you have a little bit of gold, maybe you can sell that, and at least, or maybe you leave with that in your pocket. You know, you just shut up about it. You take that in your pocket. Today you have cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is super easy to move around. That's another offshore banking, which is it's not a nasty word. It is a thing, and if you do it properly, it's perfectly legal. There's nothing wrong with that. That gives you a huge resource, because if you see your economy going down and you have an account with a few bucks somewhere else, you can move money. You can move some of those assets very fast to that other account somewhere else, and it's out of the banking system that is crumbling. Those are all little tricks. Or, for example, something that's happening right now, and I've told people, get yourself a second citizenship. You have Irish family. You have my Irish grandpa, whatever. Okay, look into it. Spain, Italy, Austria, Germany. Look into whatever family tree you have. You may be surprised that you can get something. And that something is a huge tool when something like this goes down, because you're a citizen. You go there, wherever it is that you're going, with a paper that says, I'm home, you know. That is huge.
You have a place to go to as well. Exactly. I mean, I'm a citizen. My wife is actually, she was in the process of doing her Irish citizenship, because exactly what you said. I never thought about like this in terms of a prepping thing, but that makes incredible amount of sense right there.
You definitely should do it, because if she gets Irish citizenship, you get the right to live there as well, because you're legally married, and you have every single right, not only to live in Ireland, but you have the right to live anywhere in the European Union because of it.
That's I never thought about that. That is freaking spot on.
I mean, for example, your wife gets it. She passes on to your kids.
Right.
Your kids can go to college at Trinity University for a fraction of what it costs to go to a college. And the beauty of this is you pass it down. I mean, I got it from my grandfather. I got my citizenship, my Spanish citizenship, through my grandfather. My grandfather, he had left Spain during the Civil War. And he dragged me. My parents were not interested in any of this. They just couldn't care any less. But my grandfather, he said, no, I'm taking this kid with me today.
Right.
And he took me to the embassy and got me my papers. And he said, one day you may be happy you have this.
And you are.
And I mean, that's the wisdom that comes with years of life experience, you know.
What, so how's Spain shaking out with all this stuff going on? I mean, we hear all the media in the media, you know, Italy, Spain, all that. But I mean, are you just in your locality, obviously the electricity's still on, you still able to get food? I mean, what's
Sure. Yeah. Well, for example, I went to the supermarket like yesterday. There's everything. Shelves are fully stocked. There's, I mean, even stuff like yeast, which was lacking in many places, or, you know, that sort of thing. It's completely full. There's a lot of things to criticize about the Spaniards. But man, when they get their act together, they kind of all pull in the same direction. That's something you have to give to them, because they definitely do that. There's been
flour is available too. I heard a couple guys on my live stream the other night. They said in England they still don't have any flour, and I said, man. So you're
I have my brother in London. He's telling me that I mean, he finds stuff and all, but it's not the same. Here it's I think that the only thing they don't have is like disposable gloves.
Okay.
And I found that some a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So even that, they're talking about selling, you know, the masks and all that stuff already. They went with a very hard lockdown, but it was too late. That's the thing. That's the reason why it was so bad here, because they ignored the problem completely up to the very end. There's a socialist government in Spain right now, which is very much with the Women's March Day, and they were passing some I don't know, some equality laws, or I don't know, something very political. And they had people on the streets, like millions, just when this was blowing up in Italy, and everyone was saying, we have to stop this. We cannot have people in marches and rallies by the hundreds of thousands.
Right.
This was like it was just too late. So by the time they started with the quarantine, the famous 2 weeks later that people so often say, they always say, oh, yeah, sure. In 2 weeks, everything is,
Right.
well, effectively enough. 2 weeks later, it blew up and you had like 1,000 dead per day. That was very bad.
Kind of like they say, when seconds matter, the cops are only minutes away. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. There's always, a rear guard essentially. That man, that's that. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if you follow New York and New York City.
Yeah.
The mayor was
New York
like,
is
"Come
bad.
down to Chinatown, everybody, come down." And it's like,
right. Well, that's a problem with many of these politicians that have this contrarian thing.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a deadly virus. No, let's not be racist. Let's not.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Let's. Well, in Milan, they had this thing about go hug an
Yes.
Asian. Hug an Asian. Why? I wouldn't normally go hugging strangers, no matter if they're Asian, black, Chinese, or whatever. I don't care, but I don't normally go hugging people. Why are you asking me to go hug a Chinese dude?
Right.
Why? But a lot of people did that because they thought it was a way in which you virtue signaling.
Exactly.
Look, I'm gonna be. I don't know this person. I don't know this poor guy who's just on a holiday here, but he looks Asian. So
Right, exactly.
And showing it to the world. That is, of course, first of all, it's stupid. And second, it was a recipe for disaster because many of the Asian workers in Milan working in the textile industry were from the province where coronavirus started. They were absolutely infected. And in this virtue signaling nonsense, a lot of people got infected. And it was like, it's very strange because right now it's kind of, especially in the United States, it's kind of like the left that is the one that is pro lockdown and
Right.
Back in the day, they were the exact opposite. They were telling you that there was nothing to worry about, that the worst virus was fear itself. So I don't know. You have to be smart. Use your own head. You just.
Well, the hugging Asian thing, I literally can't think of anything more racist. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like, how do I know he's Asian? Because he looks like him. What
he
the
has
hell?
his eyes.
Exactly.
So
it's like that's the most racist thing you can have. I mean, you should see a couple of my uncles. They look half Asian because we have some like Mongolian, I guess, in our blood, but they're German. But if you just would go up to him and say, "You look Asian," well, that's pretty racist, man. Whole thing's nuts. Any other? So you've had a YouTube channel for quite some time. I mean, how did you start doing that? Same kind of thing, just to educate people on the things you've seen, or what?
I first when all this started. Well, when it started for me, at least, in terms of when I started writing, I think I published my first book in 2008. So I took my time. I didn't just jump into it after 2001. But during 2001, I was very much online in forums, participating. And a lot of people were like, Fernando, you have to write a book about this stuff because we definitely could use this and such. But it took some time for me to actually go through with it. And when I decided to do that, I started my own website, which the Modern Survivalist, the Modern Survivalist YouTube channel, and now I started with Spanish content as well. It's called Supervivencia Moderna, and it's actually going very well. There's a very strong preparedness community in the Spanish-speaking world.
Oh, that's great. I imagine they have to be because they have seen firsthand, going down to Chile and then, just the very, I like Peru. I mean, they get all kinds. I mean,
it's a bit different because one of the different. I started with my American hardcore followers, and that was my audience. It still is. Most of my audience is definitely 90% American. Right. But with my Spanish speaking audience, they relate to a lot better to many of the things, because if I try to explain an American what it's like to live, the idea of not locking your door or not having bars on your windows, all of them, that just doesn't apply to a lot of you guys. A guy that lives in small town Texas, he lives his door open. He's not gonna be shutting it down. No. And when I tell him, no, we live like this. We have everything, I had a reinforced bulletproof door that you wouldn't bring down with a truck, and it was poured concrete and a steel frame because that's the minimum security. You cannot have those doors that you can just kick down. That's the stuff we see on TV.
Oh, absolutely.
When we watch American television and we see a cop kicking down our door, we look at our own door and that wouldn't have. If you could go into a house as easily like that in Buenos Aires, you would be robbed within the first week of having something like that. You have to have, everything has to be reinforced, everything has to be bulletproof, doors have to, so you kind of like live like that.
Well, I remember I had a good friend of mine in college who's from Peru, and his grandma lived in Lima, and we went down there in 1996. I'll never forget. So, they a nice suburban, nice, lower middle class, but they all had like walls. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just like you said, it's like, so you have to go through a wall to get to the front yard. And it's the weirdest thing. I said, and I remember his name is Manuel. I said, Manuel, why does everyone got walls? He goes, that's the first order of protection right there.
Yeah.
And they had bars on the doors, just like, you know what I'm saying? I said, it was interesting to me. But that guy in Texas or me in Maine, we keep my mom used to keep her keys in her car, Fernando. You know what I'm saying? When you go to bed at night, just leave the keys in there because no one's going to steal it. But desperate times bring desperate measures. And when people start getting fearful and panicked, which is what the government wants us to do, they're easily led. And then on top of that, they act irrationally too. Are you, do you got another job? Or are you doing this full time or what?
No, I'm pretty much working, I've been a writer for many years now. And fortunately it's something that people are interested in. I do consulting as well. Anyone that wants to, I get some of the strangest conversations with people, but that's something I do as well. The thing is this: when you live like that, you need that wall. I mean, in South America, many houses that didn't have it, you would have for example, my childhood house had a very beautiful front lawn with plants and all that, and it was all open. As time went by, eventually my folks put up 6-foot iron fence on front because you need that perimeter. This is like security 101. Military style, a perimeter. You need a defined perimeter that applies for home security as well. So little by little, things went changing. My house that didn't have a fence, and not a short picket fence, but an actual iron one with spikes on the tip and such. That was suddenly went from nice to have to absolutely necessary.
Well, especially if you're, in the middle class, you got a target on your back that shows that you have some wealth that some other people don't, right?
I think that's a way in which everyone. These are things I talk with. For example, I was talking with someone from South Africa. Amazing the similarities. I talked with someone from South Africa, and he goes like, "Yes, we do the exact same thing. Yes, we do this." If you're middle class, even if you're poor as well, you need to improve your security because poor people get robbed as well. If you're well off, rich people, or upper middle class, you either have a perimeter like this, or more likely you live in a gated community with a wall. And you have private security driving around all day long. And that security at first is something more symbolic, but eventually you need some serious people there. As crime gets worse, security has to keep up with it because if not, you pay the consequences.
Oh, man. I'll share it. I'll let you get on your day, but I'll share just real quick. I had this client of mine, Fernando, you like this, and he was from Africa. I can't remember what country, but long story short, back in the 70s, his dad ran like a textile firm, a plant in Africa someplace. So he was wealthy. And the communists came to take, were coming to take over the country. I just can't remember what country it is. But I was telling him, because he kept a whole bunch of gold, this guy was a son of his dad. I said, how come he keeps so much gold? He goes, because Josh, one thing, the only way we were able to flee, because the communists were going to, obviously confiscate their property, but kill them too, because they're capitalists.
Yeah, sure.
Is my dad had enough gold where he could bribe people to get us
get
out of the country and get us on a boat to come. They landed in Miami, or he landed in I can't remember, it was Brazil. I think it was Miami. But anyway, he landed in Miami by boat. He said the only way we could flee was that we had to have gold.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that. I probably talked to this guy 10 years ago, Fernando. I said, so people ask me all the time, oh, gold is no good, or silver. I said, man, you don't understand.
Yeah.
It's not because it's an investment. It's because the security that it can provide to you to get out if the communists come, or like you were just saying with Argentina or even Venezuela. And we have, it goes back to Abraham's time, and we got, pre-Jesus, for heaven's sake. So it's not like it's just a new phenomenon. But
that's the concept of jewelry was always to have a small amount of gold on you in case. I mean, you have World War II.
Yeah.
Many of the Jews that escaped the Nazis, they were able to do that because they had physical gold and wealth to take with them. A lot of those guys managed to escape because they had that gold. And it's the same story everywhere else. If you were anywhere, if you were in Eastern Ukraine, as the Russians start rolling in and you have to leave, you're going to be losing the farm. You're going to be losing that beautiful garden that you planted. You're going to be losing everything. And you should still have it. You should still have the solar panels.
Right,
you should still have everything. That's all fine. But if you have to make that hard, tough decision that millions have done in the past, you can only take with you whatever you can take. And gold is definitely, it's definitely something.
It's a safe haven, if nothing else. All right, so I'll put links to all your stuff, your YouTube. I've subscribed to your YouTube channel, and I think it's cool that you have the Spanish speaking. Well, I don't speak Spanish, but I got a number of people who follow me for financial stuff. They do, and I think they'll get a kick out of that. Know anything about what's going on in Puerto Rico by chance? Have you been? I mean, because Puerto Rico had that. They're going bankrupt. They had this huge hurricane hit through there. I don't know if you have any.
They were without power for. There's part of Puerto Rico that are still without power, right?
Yeah.
So.
Just
Puerto
more.
Rico would be one of the places that's one of the things, and this is something that I learned living in Northern Ireland. I like the idea of it, but when you're stuck in an island, you're kind of a sitting duck in there. Anything bad that happens, you're kind of screwed, I like the idea of loading up the car, and if I have to, at least I can fill up a car, for Christ's sakes. At least it's something.
Where I lived in Maine, Fernando, if it got too cold and the bay behind you froze over, you're stuck. There's no boats coming to get you. No boats delivering the food, that's for sure, because you can only raise in a small little. Hey, does Argentina have the best beef ever? Somebody was telling me that the other day. Do you think that?
Argentina is well known for beef, food, and so it's about the, it's a lot of flat land and lots of grass-fed animals. A lot of it is also very industrialized right now. A lot of it has to do with the way in which they cook food. The traditional asado, you just cut a cow in half. I mean, every single Argentine knows how to cook meat on fire. So it's more about that, I think, than the actual meat.
Hey, man. Hey, Fernando, I appreciate you being on here. I'll let you get back to your wife and kids, but thanks so much. Blessings to you, brother. I appreciate it. I'll put links in all your stuff that you have, and keep fighting the good fight, man. We need people like you out there for sure. So much obliged,
thanks.
Sir.
Thank you very much, and anytime, man. Anytime we can do this again, okay?
Hey, thanks, Fernando. I appreciate
Take
it,
care.
man. See you.